So we've heard over and over again that Israel has offered the Palestinians a state over and over again, and that they've offered peace over and over again, and now Israel demands its hostages back. But here, breaking yesterday, Netanyahu rejects Gaza ceasefire deal and says victory is, quote, within reach. So this is from The Guardian. Benjamin Netanyahu has rejected the terms of a ceasefire in Gaza proposed by Hamas and rebuffed U.S. pressure to move more quickly towards a mediated settlement to the war, saying there could be no solution to Israel's security issues absent, quote, absolute victory over the militant group. The Israeli prime minister also confirmed that the Israeli Defense Forces had been instructed to commence operations in the southern Gaza city, of Rafah, where the population has been swelled by hundreds of thousands of displaced people. In a sharp rebuff to the Biden administration and the visiting U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Netanyahu said it would require months more fighting before Hamas was defeated. Suggesting victory was within reach, the Israeli PM said there is no alternative for the military collapse of Hamas. There will not be a civilian collapse of Hamas rule without a military one. The deadliest round of fighting in the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has killed more than 27,000 Palestinians, leveled entire neighborhoods, driven the vast majority of Gaza's population from their homes, and pushed a quarter of the population to starvation. There had been mounting international concern that Israel was preparing a ground offensive in Rafah. UN officials have said an assault there would lead to a large-scale loss of life and the risk of war crimes. More on that in a second. Saying that no part of the Gaza Strip would be immune from Israel's offensive, Netanyahu, whose poll ratings have collapsed, also ruled out any arrangement that would leave Hamas in full or partial control of Gaza. Earlier in the day, Blinken had been told by the Israeli Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant, that Hamas's response to the ceasefire negotiations had guaranteed their rejection by Israel. So I just want to highlight here paragraph 2, mounting international concern that Israel was preparing a ground offensive in Rafah. Don't forget, as the northern part of the Gaza Strip has been depopulated, all of those people have now been pushed south, which means if you look at this map here, which is part of the article, you can see the orange indicates damage done before January 21st. The red indicates damage between January 1st and the 29th. That's more in the Khan Yunis area there, towards the south. But then south of there is Rafah. Now you see Rafah has incurred significant damage, right? Significant orange space, but not nearly as much as the north. So now the plan is to do to Rafah what they did to Gaza City. That's going to be colored orange. And that's going to be horrific by orders of magnitude compared to what we've seen so far, it looks like, because you have that area populated much more densely than it has ever been, because everybody who survived the offensive on northern Gaza is now flooded into these southern areas. So now you have hundreds of thousands of people on top of the people who were already living in Rafah are there. And so it's a horrible thing to say, but it sounds like the worst of this might be yet to come. And that's why there was pressure for a ceasefire. Not pressure, we didn't put any pressure, but that's why there was a ceasefire offer on the table, which, of course, Netanyahu rejected. And so let's hear some of the speech. He put this out on social media yesterday.
Tonight, I want to speak to you about total victory. Our security and the prospects of peace in the Middle East depend on one thing: total victory over Hamas. At the start of the war, I outlined 3 goals: destroy Hamas, free the hostages, and ensure that Gaza doesn't pose a threat to Israel anytime in the future. Achieving these goals will ensure Israel's security and pave the way for additional historic peace agreements with our Arab neighbors. But peace and security require total victory over Hamas. We cannot accept anything else. Can you imagine what will happen if we don't have total victory? Hamas leaders have already pledged they'll repeat the October 7th massacre over and over and over again. No nation can accept that. We certainly won't. Without total victory, Iran and its terror proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and others, will be emboldened to subvert moderate states in the Middle East. They'll threaten the entire free world. Only total victory will prevent that. And total victory is within our reach. Israel's military achievements are truly unprecedented.
That's
As
one way
John
to say it.
Spencer, head of urban warfare at West Point, noted, it took the United States and its allies 9 months to defeat ISIS in Mosul. Mosul is a single city, smaller than Gaza, doesn't have any terror tunnels, and it had only 5,000 terrorists. Yet in 4 months, the IDF has killed, wounded, or captured over 20,000 terrorists, more than half of Hamas's fighting force.
Okay, first of all, the sadism to brag about the effectiveness of his response as compared to previous efforts. Number one. Number two, that number he gave is nonsense. We've killed over 20,000 terrorists.
That's what I was thinking watching this. Where did he get that from?
Where do you get that from? The reporting now is that 27,500 total Palestinians killed, and we know that 11,500
Maybe he
of
meant
those,
civilians.
Well, yeah.
Maybe
well,
that's
this
what
is
he
it.
meant.
But this is where I figure, because he says 20,000 terrorists have been killed. We've now know that 27,000 people overall have been killed. 11,500 of those are children, are kids. So the math isn't there, BB. The math is not there. You have not killed 20,000 terrorists. That is a made-up number. That's a number that you made up to absolve yourself of accusations that you've committed war crimes, because if you killed 20,000 terrorists, now people can't say it's a genocide because that constitutes a majority of deaths, when of course we know that is just transparently absurd. It's mathematically impossible. If 11,500 children are part of the 27,000 overall, that doesn't leave 20,000 left, period. Even if every adult you killed was a terrorist, which they're not, obviously, then that's just such lies. It's just such transparent nonsense that a guy could get away with going up there and saying that, and that this is our ally. We're actually sending our diplomats over to talk to him and act like he's a good faith actor, when just look at what he has spewed there. That goes on for 6 minutes. We're not going to watch anymore, but that's what we needed from that. Just the absolute spin. And overall, what he's saying there is that all of this talk about hostage release, it's all nonsense. They are on a mission to cleanse that area, and that's what they are going to do. That's what total victory means. Total victory means we're not going to stop at a hostage deal. They're not going to stop at a hostage deal. So if they're not going to stop at a hostage deal, then the hostage argument is a red herring, right? Because that's obviously not going to play any operative role in whatever agreement comes before the total victory, or in other words, total decimation of Gaza. They're almost there. He said they're almost there. Check at the map. They are almost there. Right. The north, which was the most populated area, has been completely destroyed. That's a moonscape. And now you have the south, densely populated, about to endure another wave of violence that UN officials have said it would lead to a large-scale loss of life. Large-scale compared to what we've already seen, obviously. And how could it not? How could it not? You have the population of the north now crammed into the south. A lot of these people don't even have shelter. They don't even have anywhere to hide from the bombs, because there's not the housing available to all these people. We've seen the video, kids with pots asking for food and water. They're living outside. They're living on the streets. It's going to be, I mean, I hate to say it. It's hard to even utter, but it could be worse than what we've seen so far, if that's even imaginable.
Yeah, this is why I very often compare the impact that this is having on young people and college students who are being much maligned in the media and by billionaires like Bill Ackman, to the impact that Vietnam had on the boomers, because this is one of those things it's exposing the true face of Western imperialism. All the stuff about American morals and American integrity couldn't survive burning these peasant villagers in Vietnam alive and bombing them with napalm. It's very similar. I mean, there's just a complete collapse of any pretense of Western moral authority. How can the West talk about Putin now when
Right.
they're
Yeah.
doing this, to these people. I think I said this on Jimmy's show yesterday. I think this is part of a game, a plan that Israel has been executing for 75 years to cleanse these areas of Palestinians. They've been playing a very long game. Elon Pape said it very well. The greatest feat of propaganda Israel ever achieved is convincing people this is complicated.
Right.
As they've increased their settlements, as they've pushed people off the land, they've put out the idea, oh, it's so complicated. Oh, we have no partner for peace. Oh, they've thrown out all these smoke screens. And anytime they ever get called out on the apartheid genocidal project they're embarked on, they hide behind the Holocaust. They hide behind a Judaism that most of them, by the definition of our earlier super chatter, don't even embrace. Most of them are not. American Jews tend more to be religious Jews than Israeli Jews.
Right.
If you're really an a religious Jew, the Jews are not supposed to be there, right? The Messiah didn't come. So if you really subscribe to the tenets
Well,
of
that's
the
why a
religion,
lot of the very religious Jews are anti-Zionist. That's why you see these rabbis
exactly.
out at the protests all the time.
Exactly. I think the game that they are playing here, not to minimize it with that term, quite contemptuously with that term, is they want to make it uninhabitable so that they can argue that it is a humanitarian effort to move the
Right.
people of Gaza to the surrounding Arab countries and to set up refugee camps. And they're going to try to get their American patrons to pay for it and to use their leverage with the surrounding countries to take the refugees, and then they're going to settle it. You're going to have some ineffectual American president saying some stuff about, yes, we are talking to Israel about these settlements, just like they've been doing with the West Bank. This is part of a long-term scheme that they have had since 1948 to take over that entire region.
Please clap.